The gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I'm going to pick up where my colleague left off. You said two things. First of all, you paraphrased Eisenhower, who was the father of make the problem bigger. To solve a big problem is draw it larger, which President Trump has done in some not small steps. However, you also said we need to stop saying two-state solution. Is it fair to say that the two-state solution that once had a Pakistan that was in two parts with India in between is an example of a two-state solution that didn't work?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the reasons it didn't work was that you tried to have sovereign equality while in fact having intermixed groups that saw themselves based on their religion and other characteristics. In other words, they didn't respect the sovereign. A Muslim Indian and a Hindu Indian versus the same groups or others in Pakistan, isn't that a corollary to what we have today outside of Israel, where most Arab Israelis consider themselves Israelis and have somewhat integrated? But within the West Bank and Gaza, that's exactly what we have. Is they're not prepared to be a single sovereign nation.
Pakistan is complicated. India is complicated. The West Bank
and Gaza
is complicated. Exactly. So I'm not sure the.
Well, here's my reason for asking. I was leading to one question, which is, if we were to take your two-state solution and say, we're going to throw it out the window, then should we in America, first of all, reject organizations like the United Nations and others who have declared statehood at a time in which you couldn't be further from a responsible government to govern the Palestinians themselves, and instead be looking for a solution that is not a conventional state, one that has levels of autonomy, levels of governance, but in fact, as you alluded to, the borders would inherently be porous. The question of militarization and so on would be dealt with in some ways as though it is one nation, and in other ways clearly with a recognition of the facts on the ground.
But the other piece of this, which actually makes me a little uncomfortable, but I think is a reality, is Israel's complete sovereignty is going to be compromised. That's the meaning of working out a different meaning of state, that Israel's ability to unilaterally make decisions about finance, about security, about all those things would also be subject to some sort of outside
Well, let me go to the other
adjudication.
witnesses, because I think I get what you're saying, but I also saw their heads moving. Finding a solution that provides sufficient sovereignty, sufficient control, but recognizes this intermixing of people and respects the fact that, for better or worse, there is a functional government in Jerusalem and there isn't in Ramallah. Could I get your comments?
Yeah, so contrary to some examples we've heard, Algeria, whatever, it's currently the case that Israel does not govern the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria in the sense that they're not taxed, they're not conscripted, they're Mickey Mouse.
No, they are taxed, but it's refunded.
Sometimes refunded, and sometimes slowly.
Israel does not make their budgets. Israel does not draft them into the army. So they govern themselves. Israel's relationship with these areas is purely one of security. That's what the checkpoints are about, etc. And even if they had an independent state, Israel would still have a right to maintain a security presence because every country has a right to self-defense. So proposals about autonomy make a lot of sense. I would point out that there's places like American Samoa, part of the United States, who do not vote for you guys, but we don't consider this to be a situation of
but we
apartheid.
They do stand among us and have a say. Dr. Klein?
First of all, we have to understand the problem is refusal to accept Israel as a Jewish state. Giving them a state doesn't change that. Iraq, Iran.
This has been well established.
And by the way, I have to disabuse Mr. Alterman. We keep saying that Hamas launched this atrocious attack to stop normalization. They were planning this attack for years. They were launching rockets starting in 2005, 35,000 rockets. That wasn't to stop normalization. It was to kill Jews and destroy Israel. If there was no normalization, they'd still be doing this. Don't act like this is some sort of a political act. And even Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas, he bragged that hundreds of his own people from the Palestinian Authority were involved in the 6,500 people who were massacring 1,200 Jews.
Thank you, and thank you for your indulgence, Chairman.
I now recognize Representative Dean for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Lawler. Thank you, Ranking